Welcome to the Align It podcast. And today we have a wonderful guest that I want to introduce. JJ Gomez is the regional president for Texas at Chambers Bank. With nearly 3 decades of experience in the banking industry, JJ has been instrumental in leading the bank's expansion efforts in North Texas. His extensive expertise and leadership have been pivotal in establishing Chambers Bank's presence in the competitive Dallas market. JJ is known for his strategic vision and committed to fostering strong community relationships. We're excited to have him here to share his insights and experiences. Welcome to the show, JJ.
Ted, thank you so very much for having me today. And I think even the subject matter that we're covering today is critical and integral to every organization, no matter if it's a bank or whatever. I mean, if you're not keeping up with what's happening at warp speed in the technology space, you're getting left behind.
Yeah.
And so anyway, thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Well, Align It is really a play on aligning IT, right? So we're going to align technology. So I want to talk specifically about your expansion into the market and how you're leveraging it. So let's look at a technological adoption. How will you leverage technology to gain a competitive edge in this new market? And are there any specific tech tools or platforms that have proven particularly valuable? And lastly, how will AI factor in?
Oh,
and I know that's a lot.
I'm going to begin with how I'm going to end the presentation. I think there are 3 critical terms that I stick with is culture. If culture is not ingrained to be accepting of technology and change in the banking organization, then you're missing your mark. And I think all that being said, if change and evolution is not important, then technology will never be, or will your employees ever embrace it. I think the second point I will also make is education. If you're not educating your employees from a technological standpoint, then how do you expect whatever platform you're using to be used by the consumer? Because your employees don't have it, and they're not understanding it, and they've never been educated on it. How are they going to communicate that strategically to your clients and your customer base? So all that being said, to me that's where it begins and ends. There's those 2 points. I think from a perspective of technology, I think there's a balance. As in life, there's a good balance between brick and mortar and technology. And I think to have that good balance anymore is important in banking. And I think it's very evident, and it resonates with me what happened today in Neiman Marcus. The downtown Neiman Marcus got shut down, and it's being closed. It's been there for 100 years. I hate to say it, but a dinosaur. And I think if you are a bank and you're not right-sizing your environment to include technology or to embrace it and to implement it in your game plan, then you're going to end up a dinosaur. So I think that, whether it's the payment platforms, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's looking forward and becoming very, and even more so, customer-centric and utilizing every tool that you can as far as your technology goes. Every bank should be exposed to as much as they can and implement what they think they can. And so
that's a good one. I like that. Well, and that kind of takes me right in the next topic, risk management, right? So you are managing risk. What are the key risks and challenges associated with entering this new market here in Dallas, and how do you mitigate those?
I think, and once again, now then I get very reflective.
Yes.
And preparing for today, as I mentioned earlier, I get very reflective. Risk management, it's not like it was 35 years ago when I started. I think risk management could be based and analyzed every day on yesterday's news, right? So I can remember that, back in 1988, there's one guy that he'd put out all these green bar reports, and every department could go ahead and they could request different types of reports based on yesterday's numbers.
Right.
It was crazy, and I can just see it as like it was yesterday. There were all these little cubby holes, and then you just go get your reports for yesterday's news. It's just shocking now. If you're not dealing in real time whether it's your the monies that are coming in and out, or cybersecurity in real time, you are exposing yourself to a fatal injury, for lack of a better word. So I think risk management begins, and once again, to use that cliche, begins and ends with two words or two phrases: real time and cutting edge, and using as much every reporting tool which is based on artificial intelligence that you can. And so, I have to mention that you don't have to use all of it. I'm going to go back to it. You don't have to use all of it, but you better be exposed, and you better have somebody telling you what's out there. Because I think the one thing that we risk is the trials and tribulations of getting comfortable and doing the same thing over and over every day, and not realizing and wondering what's out there. And so I think that's from a risk management. If you're not using artificial intelligence in a real-time situation, then you could get burned from a cybersecurity perspective. Okay. You could be getting burned from a interest rate risk perspective, because then you don't know, from risk mitigation, you don't know what your if your clients are finding their here's a perfect example. If your clients are finding a better interest rate out in the market, yes, and then all of a sudden, if you don't know those monies are leaving
right
real time, then you're going to wake up and you're going to go, oh my God, my deposit base is gone. Right. And so you really have to know and have those tools built in, or once again, be exposed to it. And if you're not, you'll be a dinosaur.
Well, and as you think about the banking world, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm sure in 1988 you weren't thinking, I'm going to learn technology someday and I'm going to really have to understand technology. Mm-hmm. But you have to, at a board level, you are responsible for understanding how technology aligns with your business outcomes, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And you have to know, once again, you have to know that whether you want to admit it or not, artificial intelligence is embedded from an algorithmic perspective in every category of your bank. Mm. So the possibility to analyze what's occurring in from so many different perspectives is out there, and you do. From a board of directive perspective, if you're not being exposed to all those reporting systems, then once again you're exposing your stockholders, right, and then here comes from a regulatory perspective, you're exposing your depositor. And let me tell you, from a governmental perspective, the person that has the $5 deposit is just as important as the person that has the $5 million deposit. And therein lies the government is looking over your shoulder. Sure. It's just not your customers that'll fleet. From a regulatory standpoint, the board of directors are exposing themselves to some sort of, bad action can happen if you're not doing what you're supposed to do, crossing your T's and dotting your I's.
Well, let's pivot for a second and let's go back to sort of the story of JJ.
Yeah.
Right. So Chambers Bank is an Arkansas-based bank, and you are leading the Dallas market entry, but tell us a little bit about the story of how that came about. Who is JJ, and how is JJ leading Chambers in Dallas?
Oh gosh, JJ started about 35 years ago in Lubbock, Texas. I remember I was getting my education in finance and economics, and I just really was interested in that type of professional, and I was very interested in business and that professional aspect and perspective in life. So I went to apply at I'll never forget, there were, I want to say 15 or 18 banks in Lubbock, Texas, and I went to applied to all of them. And so finally somebody that, a bank hired me, and it was a great opportunity. I was there for 30 years. So I think that 30-year experience, and once again, starting, from the bottom up, really gave me a leg up on what I'm doing today. To be honest with you, every situation, good, bad, or indifferent, I've tried to make a positive experience out of it and learn from it.
Yes.
And so I think, and coming to Dallas, that's the one thing that has evolved, and that's what I've used those experiences to help me in Dallas and bring Chambers Bank to Dallas. But I have to say that in Dallas compared to West Texas and even Arkansas, my great story will be in West Texas and in Arkansas. The engagement it could be over time, right? People have to hug, kiss, squeeze you, see where you're going to church, who you're hanging out with, what you're doing.
Yes.
And in Dallas, Texas, you have about 5 minutes.
I believe that. And
time is money, and if you can't show somebody or educate somebody on what you bring to the table in those 5 minutes, well, in my younger day, I watched them just daze over and get distracted, and I could tell when I lost them. But in Dallas, and it's the epitome of time is money, and you want to align yourself with somebody or some entity for a reason. Now, whether that reason is experience, whether that reason is accessibility, whether that reason is knowledge. I mean, you have to give them a reason, and you got 5 minutes.
Wow.
I know that was a lot.
No, that's absolutely perfect, JJ. And you touched upon the regulatory environment.
Yeah.
And obviously, in the financial sector, you are highly regulated, and we're seeing it trickle down now more so to other industries. But how do you navigate that landscape, and especially here in Dallas, right? This is new to you. And can you just share some insights on ways you're making decisions or the analytics that you're leaning into for that?
I think and then we're going to start at the easiest one, is your customer analytics. There are, once again, I'll have to use this term, is artificial intelligence based on a deductive reasoning and questioning that will tell you where your customer base is, what different customer bases are being needed, or what their needs and wants are. I mean, just the sophistication of the customer's needs is out there anymore at a push of a button. But you have somebody there that's ready and willing to sell you those software products and implement them in your system. But you gotta be sure that it's right. It's the information you need, and it integrates well with your internal banking core systems, and so on and so forth. And I think from a regulatory perspective, if you don't have the checks and balances to study your interest rate risk there, and I'm just talking about if in your market you're paying too much on your interest bearing checking accounts or CDs, and if you're not keeping up with the ebbs and flows of that, then your net interest margin, and that's the difference between what you're paying out in CDs and money market accounts and what you're making in loans, could be shrinking without you ever knowing it. But if you're not realizing that, but if you don't have those tools internally, dealing in real time, right, then you're exposing yourself, your depositors, your shareholders to a bad situation, or you're putting their funds and their money in some sort of peril, if you will.
So, well, let's sit on that for just a second. So how did you do it 20 years ago, right? I know you talked about looking at yesterday, but think about where you were and where you are now, and just kind of help us understand what it was like when technology wasn't as strategic and aligned with what you're doing.
Yes, and I have to tell you, I always say that years ago, you had the ability to, everybody was executing on a level playing field, right? Because for the most part, you had maybe 5 things to work with, or 5 investment tools. Or if you're managing your balance sheet 20, 25 years ago, the bank's balance sheet, you didn't have that many sophisticated opportunities to invest what excess funds you have, right? And you had the time and information. And when I say time, you could set back and think about what you're doing and then do it at a leisurely pace.
Yes.
Anymore, it happens at warp speed. And now you have banks, and if you have a CFO, that CFO of the bank has so many more opportunities and investment tools that they can invest the bank's capital in different situations. And once again, that CFO has to be right there in with you, that he's using every tool to his advantage to see what the economy and the markets are doing in real time, and how, here it comes, and how it's affecting the balance sheet immediately.
Right.
And a great CFO will spend, I think, a majority of their time thinking what different situations can happen and how is it going to affect my balance sheet.
Right. So really, instead of living in yesterday, you're saying the great CFOs are living in the future, right? They're aligning with where the future is and using technology to accomplish that.
Absolutely. And it's not so much that they have the 8 ball and shake the 8 ball looking for an answer. You know, any good leader and any good key person in that role will get the people that he trusts and knows in that room, or align them with a person that they know in the industry, and think about, and they'll start that dialogue. Well, what are you seeing out there in the market? What do you think is going to happen? And then they should apply that to the bank's real numbers. But just that whole brainstorming. You know, I myself am big on brainstorming, and let's get together. Just yesterday, I met on President's Day. I met with a client, a former client, and hopefully future client of mine, and I caught myself asking them, you know, what do you all think is going to happen in this real estate market? And so, just getting together with people and aligning yourself with the right people and asking the right questions, and absorbing as much information as you can, as quick as you can, and making some sort of educated guess. I guess I don't know. That's a terrible, terrible example,
I understand.
Terrible word, but an educated guess
or a calculated guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? A calculated prediction. We can change the wording to make it sound safe.
Yes.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Right? We understand that.
Yeah.
And you've talked a lot about AI, but let's talk about data analytics, because you are making decisions based off of data. So how important is that strategy? And can you share some insights on how those are driving those decisions?
In data analytics, you just have to be sure that you as a financial institution know where you want to get. You have to start with the end in mind, right? If you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there magically, right? So then you have to be very specific and very intentful on where you're going to put a bank, why you're going to be there, and who is your target market. If you just find a piece of real estate and go at it, chaotically, then you're going to get chaos. But you really have to know those types of that type of perspective and where you're going. So that's where I say that's where you start there. And then I think that I really feel that in any software or any product out there, I mean, you can ask any question you want,
right,
and they're going to give you the answer. But if you don't start with who you want to be and where you want to be it, you're never going to get there.
Right.
And but still, I think anymore, data analytics is the most powerful and the best opportunity to differentiate yourself from the competition. And so it's out there. And from another, and we're going to, Ted, you didn't ask, but I'm going to say this, but it's going to go back to a question you had before. If you're not right-sizing your branch bank, or if you don't have the foresight to see that you need to have a great balance of a space, a business space that offers technology and people, in the right place, you're doing yourself, and once again, your shareholders a disservice.
I think of that a lot. I've got 2 younger children that are Gen Z. They don't go to the bank. They are not going to the branch. So what is some tips or some strategy? You talked about technology, but really we're in a digital world.
Yes.
Right? There isn't necessarily a need for a bank other than if you want a presence in the community, right?
Yeah.
But I can think of some banks that might have 3 branches in one area. So why is that? If we're in a digital transformation world, why is that?
Chances are there was an acquisition or a lease, a long-term lease that they've gotten pulled into and they can't get out of, and but they really do. And I'll say this with technology, whether it's Gen Z, and the one thing that comes into mind is my mother-in-law. She's an 80-ish-year-old lady, and she knows how to take a picture of a check and make a mobile deposit.
Right.
I would have never have guessed that.
Yes.
But it's amazing to see whether it's, you're right, whether it's a Gen Z person or a 80-year-old, 85-year-old lady. Everybody's embracing technology because it's easier. It's always the first time that makes it just a little bit harder. I think the great differentiator is that balance of, from a bank or the bank, do you have the people in place that can provide the engagement of that technology?
Yes.
And have you educated them?
Well, I think ITMs would be a great example
Yes,
of that,
yeah.
right? Where you've got the ATM concept, but you don't have to worry about staffing the best of the best at each location. You can centralize it all back at your primary or wherever it is that you're able to then expand your talent,
Yeah.
right? So would that be a good example of how you're seeing some of those changes maybe 5-7 years ago, but then take it to the next level now where we've got apps or maybe you've got some virtual chat assistants?
Yes.
What are some ways that you really think can currently drive, but also drive into the future?
It is two things. It is and you bringing it up is a perfect segue. I think it's the virtual assistant, the ability to offer the client the ability to ask a question
Yes.
with no judgment.
Yes.
I think that virtual assistant is the most customer-centric thing you can do. And the ability to offer the client the best situation, I think in the long run, will better serve any institution. And I'm going to say this, and this just came to me this morning in preparing for our interaction and engagement, Ted, was I'm going to steal a moment or a time or a memory from the Miracle on 34th Street from 1947.
Excellent. Yes.
If you remember where Santa Claus was telling, "Oh no, dear, don't buy this doll here. If you go around the corner, it's a better value somewhere else," or that advice, or just that direction. I think in that sense, in that emotion, and in that message is an advocate. If you can find and create a product that the client feels is their advocate, then that virtual client
Yes.
or that virtual help, then I think that is all the better for the client. Now, whether it's the I'm going to stick to this virtual assistant perspective, you're just creating a user advantage for the customer. You're making them feel better about what you're doing for them, that you're going to give them choices, you're going to give them the autonomy to ask questions that are going to go unjudged. Because they're going to be teaching all day. They're going to be putting out fires all day. But to put the tool in their hand, vis-a-vis a virtual assistant, that they'll be able to say, "I have $1,000 extra in my account. What should I do with it?"
Right.
They're not going to get judged by that virtual assistant, but in the end, they're going to have that tool, and they're going to have that opportunity as a client. They're going to feel good about themselves. But that goes back to that. Whenever you do something unconditionally for your client and put them in the best, make them feel better about the service that they're being provided, whether they're not getting judged or in the end they're going to make a higher rate of return on their investment, I think you're better served. You're better serving your client.
Well, I couldn't agree more. How do you, though, stand out from all the other virtual assistants, right? There are other banks that have a virtual assistant.
Yeah.
How do you differentiate? How, as we move into this next space, how is Chambers going to stand out?
Okay, so then that one's easy.
Okay.
And once again, I'm going to go back to the culture. I think the culture, and especially in Chambers, and especially me, is that you find that balance between technology and the personal touch. You find that, and that is in a consistent message that you communicate to your clients often. You have to touch them. You have to send them a text. You have to call them. But you have to be wired, and your culture, from the top down and around, it has to be important. Not only you have to walk the walk and talk the talk. So me as a leader, I love having the technology. I use the technology, And I'm not a hypocrite. I was just on a call last week, and there's some new technology at Chambers Bank that was being implemented, and we were on this big Teams call. And as far as tenure, I was the least tenured person on this call, but I could feel it. I thought, geez, I don't think these people get it. The only way you learn how to use it and how to implement it is if you sign up for it. So I hit, talk, and I told everybody on this call, I said, I'm going to sign up for this, and I'm going to figure out how to use this so that I can, show my clients and show the confidence that I have in this product. So, it is twofold. I swear I'm going to get back to your point.
No,
is that, yes, I think that, whenever you implement the technology, 2, you have to engage in it yourself, and 3, I have to make myself accessible to my clients, and so does everybody that's working with me in our office, in our bank, in our branch. They know that, they live by it, but then they see me doing it as well. But that goes back to the culture.
Yes.
Culture doesn't happen by magic. And that goes back to your. I'm going to touch on to this as well. Is that your board of directors? If the culture is not communicated to the board and by the board, that exposure to artificial intelligence or utilization of those different reporting tools are not being implemented or even looked at, right, then once again you're exposing yourself to some interest rate risk, to cyber attacks, to the plethora of issues that we need to be covering on a daily basis.
So we're nearing the end of the show,
okay,
end of our time together, but let me just wrap it up with a pretty bow on a couple things. One is I see the banking relationship as a very, very important one. So you're entering a new market.
Yes.
How do you begin to build knowing the importance of that and stressing to people not to change just because, right? You're going to change because you're either unhappy,
yep,
or you want to see an advantage. So what is that message that you walk in and say, here's what warrants a conversation with me?
Yes, and more times than not, you're exactly right. I'm gonna build first and foremost on my reputation, my relationships. Then I'll go to the bank and the bank's history and technology. Okay. And I'm telling you, if the technology's not there, you're getting left behind. Yeah. But like we were talking earlier before we started today, if you don't have that dialogue built in and you don't believe it, then your clients are going to be able to call you out. Then it's just never going to happen. And so I think first and foremost, coming into a new market, I'll use this word again. It's a very intentional message is being sent and presented. And 2, the activities involved in that message are, 1, very scheduled and very focused. You always have to use your focus, and that's one thing I've found over the years is you have to realize, and I can't be everything to everybody.
That's right.
But to the people that I bank, I want to be everything to them.
Excellent.
And all that being said, that does, in this presentation, the great differentiator. And gosh, Ted, I wish I could tell you that I was the king of all knowing, but it's that I just try harder, yeah, and I do more for my clients. That's the great differentiator. Yesterday on President's Day, I was locked full with meetings and calls, amazing. But that is just the epitome. You can call my wife and she will tell you I'm a faulted man, but for the most part, I really try hard, and I think that's what makes or breaks you in this market is trying harder and doing more. Because then going back to your regulatory perspective and your board of directors, that for the most part, once again, it is a level playing field, and we are dealing in the same products and procedures. But you have to find your strengths and realize others' weaknesses.
Yes, yes.
To say that.
Well, JJ, thanks for your time. I want to end with one last question, and that is, for all of the people listening, what advice would you give them when they look at how they need to make sure that their business aligns with their banking?
Ted, that is a great question, and I think it's to find that a trusted advisor first and foremost, and be very reflective on your own personal business and your own personal perspective, and realize the goals that you're wanting to achieve. Write down those goals, realize those categories, and find somebody, a trusted advisor. Find a trusted advisor. That is the most important word I can use today, that you can ask them, where do you bank? And who's fulfilling those wants and needs? And I think that's the one thing that I would find most important in finding, to fulfilling those needs, is that trusted advisor.
That's wonderful. Well, JJ, for everybody listening that needs a trusted advisor, how would they find you?
Yes, they would find me at 3131 Turtle Creek Boulevard here in Dallas, Texas. And they would find us at www.chambers.bank. And my own personal email address is jgomez@chambers.bank.
Wow, I love that. Well, thank you for spending time with us today as we talk about how you align it. And for anybody watching that needs technology alignment, we would love the chance to work with you. You can reach us at pcatechsolutions.com.